So this is going to be the start of a new series that I'm starting, which will be my Thinking Out Loud series, but instead of my own games, it's going to be going over a master level game and then trying to figure out exactly what the master or whatever was trying to do. The first game we're going to go over here is going to be the opera game, which is Paul Morphy versus the Duke and the Count. Duke Karl and Count Isouard. Now, this is one of the most famous games in chess history. The opera game comes with an amazing sacrifice at the end, where Paul Morphy sacrifices his queen and has a nice checkmating attack that ends in the Morphy mate, is what it's called, or the opera mate. I can't really remember, but we'll take a look at the end here. And this was played during an opera where Morphy played against two different people, which in and of itself would sound like it's really hard. But actually, I feel like when you're playing with two other people and they're trying to figure out what they want to do, sometimes they might not be as coordinated. And so let's just see how this game goes. And so Morphy, as he liked to do back in the day, this is all romantic chess. So e4, e5, and then what I'll do is I'm just going to go through the first couple moves just to get it to where things are where they should be. So already here on move 3 with the bishop to g4. According to Bobby Fischer, this is a weak move already. What it does is most of the time people want to take d takes e4 or e takes d4 right here. E takes d4. And that was because this is kind of a Scotch game. It is a Scotch game. But I want to develop, I get it. Then we're going to do d takes e5. We're going to open up the center, get the queens looking at one another if they decide to take back. But they decide not to. They go to bishop f3. They're going to take the knight that was on f3, attacking the queen, and it looks like they're attacking the g2 pawn. And so most people would take back, and that's honestly the best one to be taken with the queen that attacks the f7 square. So from here, I'm going to start with my own thought process to see if I can figure out what the next move is going to be. And so with this, white is already looking at the f7 square, which is right here. The f7 square is traditionally the weakest square in the opening because the only thing that's looking at it is this. The only thing that's looking at it is the king. And so because the king is the only one that's defending the f square, then you want to put a lot of pressure on it. Bishop to c5 is something I would like to do, which is going to put the queen and the bishop to look on the f7 square with a checkmate threat. It also gives me the opportunity to castle as well. And so those are two moves that I would really, really look into. It would be bishop to c4, maybe knight to c3, and get my queen side pieces out. But first of all, I want to get castled. Bishop c4 is what Morphy decides to do, putting that tons of pressure on that f-pawn. There is a couple of ways to block it. I think knight f6 is the best move for them. And so knight f6. From here, the candidate moves that I see would be castling, getting your king out of the center. I also really like knight to c3, getting the queen side developed, and also pinning the knight with bishop to g6. Bishop g5. Bishop to g5 right here. In the opening, I like to develop my pieces before going for an attack. So for me, I would go ahead and castle here, or knight to c3 would be the two moves I do. Let's see what Morphy does. So Morphy really piles up on that f-pawn, but the added benefit is he's looking at the b7 pawn. The b7 pawn isn't defended by anything. It's just a hanging pawn at this moment. But that f7 pawn is very much a weak point for him, or for black right now. Certain ways that they can defend that pawn right now would be moving the queen up to either d7 or e7. Having the queen defend that pawn is about the only way that I see that they can defend it properly. Yeah, queen to e7. That makes sense. So they're trying to get developed. They're defending that f7 pawn with an additional defender. And From here, knight c3 obviously getting developed. Bishop to g5 once again is another move, really pinning that knight, and obviously taking the pawn. The b pawn would be another option. For an early attack, queen takes b7 is one that jumps out at me. Due to the fact, is there any way that they could stop me from doing what I want to do, which is taking the rook? Not really. Queen takes b7 would be one I would really consider doing. Knight c3 to get developed would be the other one, doing the rapid development. Queen takes b7 or knight c3. Those are my two options, my two candidate moves. So knight c3 was the correct move. And obviously that pawn, that b7 pawn is still hanging. The Duke and the Count, they really need to do something here. What do we think they're going to do here? Maybe they could always push b6. That would stop that in its tracks, but then that runs into some really nastiness with bishop to d5, and then knight takes d5, queen takes d5, and then you are eyeballing that rook is going to fall. And so don't really see a way to save that pawn for them. Their king is in the center too, and that's also scary. That diagonal, that long diagonal right there, from here to the king, from there to the king is actually a big time weakness. And so let's see what they're going to do here. c6. That's actually something I didn't consider because the b7 pawn was hanging. That is one way to defend it that I didn't see, was pushing that c6 pawn. That also has the added benefit of closing off that diagonal of the light squares for the queen and bishop to jump over there to check the king. So from here, I obviously can still castle. There's not really any major threats that's going on that I'm too worried about. Getting castled is always priority number one, or be candidate move number one. And then getting my dark squared bishop out would be another one. The only two places that it really could go would be to either e3 or g5. G5 has that added benefit. It's one I've been eyeballing for a while. So we're either going to say castles or bishop to g5. Bishop to g5 would probably be what I would play just to get that pin in. And so bishop to g5, that is what Morphy decides to do. I really like that pin. That's a nice pin. It has the added benefit, though, of if they ever move that c pawn, then I could pile onto the pin by moving the knight up to d5. That would attack the queen and the pinned knight, and it would be on an outpost because it's defended by a pawn. Let's see what black's going to do here. b5. Oh, that's interesting. b5. That's attacking my bishop. Obviously, I could move the bishop back, maybe moving it to either d3 or e2, and looking to maybe transfer it over to the king side. I could always take the pawn and sacrifice a minor for two pawns, and that wouldn't be too bad, considering I could take with the knight. Knight takes b5, and then c takes d5. And then I could either take back with the queen, or I could take back with the bishop, and that would be with check. And so let's say we take with the bishop. So he would have to block it with either the knights. It would probably be the b knight, so b to d7. If he were to do it with the block with the other knight, then he would be losing his queen because that one's still pinned. And then, of course, if they move over to e8, then I could castle queen's side and have a check there with the rook that ends up on d1. If I was going to play like Paul Morphy, I would definitely sacrifice the knight. So sacrifice the knight or move it back to e2. Bishop e2 or knight takes b5. Okay, knight takes b5. Makes total sense. So the obvious follow-up here would be c takes b5. Now here's where I had that dilemma. Did I want to take with the queen or did I want to take with the bishop? If I take with the queen and they block with the queen, then I'm just swapping queens off at that point. That doesn't help me a whole lot. I would take with the bishop. Bishop takes b5. Bishop takes b5. Now black needs to figure out what they want to do. they need to block this check. If they move over to the D file, I can castle long, have a nice check there. I think they're going to have to block with the B knights. B to D7. Knight B, D7. Okay, knight B to D7 blocks it. And so that leaves us with what we want to do here. So we've got a pin on both the knights. One knight is pinned to the queen. The other knight is pinned to the king. So that's an absolute pin. To exploit that, I can bring my pawn forward. Whoops. What's going on here? What's going on here? I've got the attack on this knight who's pinned to the king. And so to pile it on, I could either bring up my c-pawn, bring the c-pawn up to attack it, but that would break the pin before I could take the knight. I could also castle queenside, which would give me the added benefit of having another attacker on that knight. Castling queenside would probably be what I would do here. And that is also what Morphy does. And from here, you're going to have to add another defender, because I've got two attackers on that knight. It is pinned. So bringing over the rook would add another defender, but that is a really unpleasant diagonal for that knight to be stuck on. Let's see what else we got here. He doesn't want to move the king, doesn't want to move the queen. Queen's kind of stuck too. It has to be the rook. The rook has to go to D8. Rook D8. And so now we're in another unpleasant situation for black. What do I want to do here? This knight is in a really bad spot for black. Would I attack it again by adding another attacker? Maybe going queen to A4 would be an option, which that adds the other benefit of attacking the A pawn. Or do I go ahead and exploit the other knight and take it off the board by going bishop takes C6, queen takes C6, and then bishop or rook takes D7. Yeah, I think I want to take the C3 knight, or F3 knight. Bishop takes F3 to get the queen defense off of the D2 knight, D8, blah, 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 D7 knight, and then I can exploit that pin even further. I think it's bishop takes F6. Okay, so it's knight or rook takes D7. Why did he do this? Obviously, if he takes with the rook, I can swap the rook off, and the queen comes over. So I'm looking at rook takes D7, bishop takes D7, queen takes D7. And then the other rook can swing over to D1, attacking that queen. Then if the queen moves over to, yeah, I think that's going to be rook takes D7. And then I do think it's bishop takes D7. Bishop takes D7, that opens up the queen to come back and check the king on the B8 square. So he goes rook D1. So he's piling on the pin again, which that's not bad. It's actually not bad at all, because then I can swap off. Okay, what do we want to do here? Let's just see what his move is, because I'm not sure. He's kind of in a bind here. I'm assuming it's a queen move, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. So queen e6. I think now is when you want to exploit it and take that bishop, takes rook on d7 with check, because now he can take with the knight. He can take with the knight. Yep, I think it's bishop takes, and then knight will take d7. And what's after that? Bishop takes, knight takes. What do we got going on here? For those of you who know this game, you obviously know what the ending is. I've seen this ending before. It comes with a pretty nice sacrifice that opens up the checkmate pattern. Please pause the video and let me know in the comments if you know what the final sacrifice is in this move. And I'll give you guys about 5 seconds to pause it, and then I will give the answer. We're back. So this is where the most famous portion of this comes in. The checkmating square for the white rook is on the d8 square because it's defended by the dark squared bishop. It also cuts off the king from going up to d7 or e7 to get out of there. And so you need to make a way for that rook to get up there. And so Morphy, being Morphy and not being Eric, as he sacrifices his queen on b8. This has the added benefit that it is with check. The king can't get out of the check by moving, so he is forced to take with the queen. Take the queen with the rook, the bishop. So he is forced to take the queen with his knight. So knight has to take on b8. And that has the added benefit of allowing the checkmate of rook to d8. Rook to d8. So this was a very instructive game. I've seen the ending of this game before, but I've never actually seen the whole thing. From what I remember, Morphy was an incredible sacrificer. He was very good about developing with initiative, developing with threats. And if I remember, there were actually some Paul Morphy rules of the opening that people had generated over the years that I will link in the description of this. And I think that going forward, this is actually a pretty fun style of me going over master games, because I'm not a master level player. I'm going to try and understand what these moves are. And I'm also going to try and do it more as a guess the move style. So this one, because I actually had the PGN, I was trying my best not to look at it to see what the moves were. But I did catch myself looking down there, and I am fully transparent with you guys that is what was going on. Some of these moves I wasn't the greatest at. I think if I were to put this onto maybe even chess.com or Lee Chess, there is a guess the move that hides the moves after this. And so I might try to do that going forward. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this. If you guys found it instructional or informative, or what game in the future you'd like for me to go over. I'm willing to go over master games. I'm willing to go over community games. Because honestly, I'm going to learn, and hopefully you guys will learn as well about some of these amazing games. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for another Thinking Out Loud, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks.